We'll talk about that.
It's quite poor. Hello, my name is Ian. This channel is all about music and art, and this is where we talk about music and art. And in this series of videos, we've been looking at what's been happening regarding music streaming in the UK. The UK government's Digital Culture, Media and Sports Committee have been looking into the ways that the streaming platforms and other large record companies manage payments to songwriters, musicians and performers. And on the 15th of October 2020, UK Parliament published a news article stating that the Digital Culture, Media and Sports Committee were going to inquire into the impact of the streaming on the future of the music industry. The article stated that the inquiry would consider whether the government should take action to protect the industry from piracy in the wake of steps taken by the EU on copyright and intellectual property rights. Now, I knew that there were some high-profile musicians and music industry types who were giving evidence to the committee. And the first of these meetings was on the 24th of November 2020, with another meeting on the 8th of December. Now, these were long meetings lasting over 3 hours. So what I've done is I've decided to edit them down into shorter videos, and the links to all the previous meeting videos are in the description down below. And now we're in 2021, the Digital Culture, Media and Sports Committee are back in session, and they have two more meetings, one in January on the 19th of 2021 and another in February the 4th. And there is another meeting scheduled for later in February. So let's have a look at the meeting from the 19th of January 2021 first. It's worth providing some background to the witnesses giving evidence to this first session. We had Peter Leathem, who is the Chief Executive of the Phonographic Performance Ltd, or PPL as they are known. Now, Peter Leathem joined PPL as the Head of Legal and Business Affairs in 2002, following several senior positions with the company since that time. I mean, including Managing Director. He was appointed to the position of CEO in January 2012, and prior to joining the company, he was a partner for 8 years in the city law firm GSC Solicitors, where he specialised in intellectual property and was head of the intellectual property department. Now, if you're not sure what PPL is and what they do, they are a UK music licensing company that manage the rights for over 120,000 performers, including myself, and recording rights holders, and have been licensing the use of recorded music in the UK since 1934. So PPL licenses radio stations, TV broadcasts and certain digital media services to play recorded material in the UK. And they also license music supplied to copyright recorded music services such as in-store music systems, jukeboxes and compilations of exercise classes and in-flight entertainment systems, that type of thing. And if you've ever tried to register your recordings with them, you'll know that their website is like knitting fog. But we digress. The other witness in this session was Andrea Martin, who is the Chief Executive of PRS for Music. Her career has been varied, working for a diverse range of data-focused and big subscription-based organisations. She has been President and CEO of 3 international businesses with the Reader's Digest Association, a multimedia brand entertainment company, and the Managing Director of Data Services for the Royal Mail in the UK. And I believe she was also present for ADT in Canada. And if you're not sure what PRS for Music do, it's a British music copyright collective. And it undertakes to collect rights management and music works on behalf of its 140,000 members, of which I am one of them, and it was formed in 1997. PRS represents songwriters, composers and music publishers performing rights and collects royalties on their behalf whenever the music is played or performed publicly. Now, I've been a member of PRS for over 20 years and I'm very critical of how the organisation is run, but really that is a discussion for another day and not while we're here. All of the sessions for these committees were chaired by Julian Knight, and the complete list of committee members and the relevant links are in the description down below. This recording is made in agreement with the UK Parliament Terms and Conditions, which states I cannot alter the video and audio of the recording in any way. I can't use this material for satire or use it on a website or social media platform that promotes, encourages or facilitates illegal activity or encourages hatred and antisocial behaviour. So, here is part 1 of session 1 from the 19th of January 2021 into the economics of music streaming.
Order, order. This is the Digital Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee, and this is our hearing into the economics of music streaming. Today we've got 2 panels, and our first panel is Peter Leathem, Chief Executive of the Phonographic Performance Ltd, and Andrea Martin, Chief Executive of PRS for Music. Good morning, Peter, and good morning, Andrea. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning.
Thank you. Now, before we start our first question, I'm going to open up for members' interests. So, Kevin Brennan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to refer, obviously, to my entry in Register of Members' Interests. I'm a member of PRS for Music, and I've received tickets and hospitality from PRS for Music and some royalties in the past. I've received tickets and hospitality from Universal Music Group, who are in front of us later. I'm a member of the Musicians Union, and they made a donation to my electoral fund, and I've some earnings as a musician declared.
Thank you. Steve Brine.
Yes, very similar to Mr. Brennan. I have received hospitality from Universal Music and PRS for Music in the past.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any interest to declare? No. Okay. So our first questions come from Kevin Brennan. Kevin Brennan.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome, Andrea and Peter. Peter, could I ask you a few questions to kick things off? And we are pushed for time, so I'm going to sort of rattle through these as quickly as we can this morning. PPL has traditionally collected revenue derived from linear radio play, amongst other things. As the way people consume music is changing, including by streaming, how's that affecting the sort of income that PPL is able to collect?
I think that PPL's had a very successful 10 years in terms of our growth. I think we've up in 2019, the last year we announced all our financial results for, we collected £271 million, which is almost a doubling of that over the last 10 years, so £128 million increase. So we've seen 10 years of consistent growth. And even though we've had obviously the rise of streaming and other activities, things like commercial radio continue to grow. So our revenue from radio over the last 5 years has grown by just over 20%. Commercial radio listening is at the highest it's been, 35 million listeners a week. And so certain things at the moment are continuing to grow for performers and record companies.
Would you, given the growth in streaming, which has been huge in recent years, would you favour something like equitable remuneration, which is paid in relation to radio play and so on, being extended to streaming?
Well, I think from PPL's point of view, we're given a certain amount of rights by record companies and performers. So we're obviously licensing public performance, TV, radio. We go around the world collecting as well. So part of our role is actually to take those rights that are given to us and try to administer them as carefully and as accurately as possible and take those forward. Now, from our point of view, we don't particularly have a view about other income streams as to whether or not they should be having certain rights, etc. If there were those rights, then obviously PPL could play a role and perform there. But as I say, we don't have a particular opinion about which other services should have streaming rights from.
But you'd be happy to administer them if a change happened that meant that money came your way from streaming.
Yeah, I mean we're a professional sort of repertoire matching and distribution service. We receive over 30,000 recordings a week. We paid last year many record companies and performers. So over 100,000 performers were paid last year. About 12,000 recording rights holders. So we're set up to handle large amounts of repertoire, to make large payments. And so yeah, if the new rights came along, we could play a role in administering those. Okay.
Now, there are some new sort of services online. Do you get money from a service like Apple Beats, which seems to be like a linear, almost like a radio station? Do they actually pay money to PPL?
Yeah, so what's happened is that our streaming traditionally, as you say, was radio and TV. Gradually, that's moved into other areas such as, for example, the BBC will have its iPlayer, catch-up TV, catch-up radio. So we've done licensing in that particular area, and then also we license about 3,500 internet radio stations. So there's been this gradual movement of where that licensing takes place. Something like Apple is a good example where Apple is actually licensed directly by the record companies, but they have now launched Apple Music Radio, and that's an area where that does have extra remuneration to be paid. So there's currently a dialogue going on at the moment about PPL providing some administration there to make sure the performers are paid that ER for that particular service.
So you'd expect them to be paying in the near future, and would you expect any backdating of that?
Yes, on both counts.
Okay. PPL's Momentum Fund, do you want to tell the committee what that is? Because it's been a source of support, I think, for musicians during the current situation, and how that gets funded.
Yeah. So PPL, within about 12 months of the end of a particular year, we pay out about 96% of our money. As I say, we paid sort of about 12,000 record company rights holders and about 122,000 performers last year. So there's lots of money going out there. And then we spend about 6 years trying to find performers to make sure they're linked to recordings to make them paid. So by the end of that 6-year period, we have a situation where we have to close down that distribution, and we have around about 1.5% to 2% of the money left. And then what we do historically, we've actually then distributed that pro rata to those performers and record companies in that particular distribution that were paid. More recently, what we've started to do, and this is led by the performers and the record companies, has been looking at how can we support new talent, how can we support artist welfare, and a range of different funding things. So what we've done over the last few years is we've come together with the PRS Foundation, who have been running for a number of years, and we've started to provide some additional funding, as well as the funding provided by PRS, to things like the Momentum Fund, which is trying to identify up-and-coming artists, to provide them funding to take their career to the next stage. And so what we're doing there is that rather than redistributing pro rata some of those monies at the end of 6 years to other members, there's been a decision made, actually, that's probably a good time to be trying to help support the next layer of talent to come through in a very difficult industry.
So the artists who might otherwise get some of that pro rata distribution effectively are giving off some income to help new up-and-coming artists. Do the record labels contribute their share to that fund?
In relation to the Momentum Fund, no, that is actually funded by the performer side. And again, it's decisions made by the different interest groups, the record companies and performers, as to how they're going to use that money and which bits they're going to support. So on that particular PPL Momentum Fund, that is supported by the performer side. So
the record labels just keep their share of it?
Yeah, on the record company side, what they do is that is just redistributed pro rata across those record companies. And they take the view that they'll then take that and then reinvest it in their own artists and repertoire, their own artists, and develop from there. Okay.
Could I also just ask Andrea one question, because we're on a very tight timetable today. So I'm just going to ask you the one question. Do you get money from services like Facebook and for PRS, which obviously is responsible for paying out songwriters and composers for their copyright? Do they give you the data of the music that they're playing? And are you able to identify whose music's being played on Facebook?
So, Mr. Brennan, I wonder if it would be worth it just quickly, I know we're under time, just to make sure that people understand what PRS for music does.
I think probably if you just answer this question, Andrew, because
okay.
of time constraints, so we've got quite extensive briefing in front of us, so that can all be on the record in our written evidence. Yeah.
Okay, so as you know, I'm relatively new in this business. My background is data transformation, digital and tech. Got over 30 years experience on data, and PRS, and like many companies, handle big data. And so one of the things I've learned over the 30 years is better data in, better data out. And yes, we do get data from Facebook. And in 2019, PRS for music processed almost 19 trillion usage of music. And we think this year it's about 25 to 30 trillion.
It's a huge amount of data, Andrew. Do Facebook actually tell you then which music is being played, or they just give you a chunk of money for you to distribute pro rata?
So it depends on, the accuracy of the data and how quickly we get it. Yes, they do. And in some cases, because of the hosting defense and safe harbor, we don't always get, and because of content recognition, we don't always get all the data and all the content.
Okay.
And I think the government can really help us on that, on Article 16 of the copyright directive, not the copyright directive, but the collective. Definitely on Article 16, the government can help us make sure that we do get data and in a certain standard.
Thank you.
I'm going to leave it there, Chair, given the time constraints. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather Wheeler?
Andrea, you brought me nicely to my question, which was, what could the government do to help you about data? So could you expand a little bit more about this Article 16 so that everybody that's watching could learn a bit more?
Absolutely, Mrs. Wheeler. The Article 16 is the Collective Rights Management Regulation, which stipulates to make sure that to enforce the provision of data, so the user, that they provide the data under certain standards. And I think it's really important because in the last 5 years of the regulation, it hasn't been really implemented and we haven't seen the government using those tools. And it's really important because the more data we get, the more accurate and quickly, the more we can pay our members of what's due to them.
So what you're saying is there's an existing regulation which would help actually transfer from the data that you get money to your members.
Absolutely.
But the government doesn't insist on Article 16 being used, or?
No, exactly. We actually haven't seen the government really using those tools that are available.
Andrea, that's really helpful. Thank you so much. I'll finish there, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. That was so quick, you caught me out there. Steve Brine.
Speed is of the essence. Andrea, good morning. Thanks for joining us. Just reading over the last couple of days your submission to us. I'm interested in just exploring a little bit on the so-called safe harbour provisions, if I may. You call on the government to get with its commitment to close what's known as the value gap by addressing the safe harbour provisions for social media. Obviously, the difference between music uploaded to social media and uploaded to streaming services. So can I just explore with you, how does licensing music for social media companies, so YouTube, for instance, compare to other streaming services? Could you just explore that for us, for our evidence?
Yes. So what's really important, what I want is to make sure that whenever and wherever music, members are used online, they're paid for it. Okay. And they have to be licensed. And so to make sure that there's fair value, when we look at the hosting defense in the EU or the safe harbor in the US, it dates back to 2001. If you think of it, the iPod didn't even exist then, and that's almost 20 years. Yes, there has been an evolution, but the market is going really quickly and it has to be modernized. Yes, the EU has recognized that and issued a directive, Article 17 of the Copyright Directive, that limits the scope of safe harbor or the scope of hosting defense in the EU. And I think that the UK government, and I heard also on previous sessions, the UK government has a huge opportunity now to take what the EU has done and improve it so much better to make sure that the money that is due to our members, that more money goes back into the pockets of the creators. I think it's really important that we update that legislation and we really, the hosting defense allows some online performers, platforms to claim that they aren't liable for the music and don't pay out to our members.
But presumably this is not just a role for the UK government. I mean, I hear you that obviously we sit outside the EU's regulatory regime now, but what they do matters to what we do, and this is a global issue, isn't it? So I wonder what work PRS does with its brother and sister companies around the world in this respect.
So definitely we work with our sister companies through CSAC, which is an international body, and we do what we can to make sure that they also implement global legislation. And really, we have done a lot of work on this PRS, and we're more than happy to share with the committee all the work we have done on that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
So thanks very much for watching. The next video will be a continuation of this first session. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.